Hey everybody, welcome to today's video. We're talking about pre-production, specifically pre-production for making a short film. The short film we're talking about is the experience that I had in making my short film called Lone Mountain. We're shooting it on film, on 16mm film. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? What I am hoping this video will do is to highlight the things that I felt we did great, to showcase the things that I didn't expect turned out really good, and of course to highlight the things that I wish we would have done better to learn from in the future. This is a very personal one-on-one experience with you to talk about what happened to Lone Mountain and what happened with the short film and how we did it, how we pulled it off. Filmmaking is a team sport by all means. So yeah, let me show you who some of the guys I had come on board for this project with me. My buddy Travis Williams, who is here in Eastern Idaho. He owns a production company as well. He's in Pocatello. The next person I brought on board, Derek, actually is a filmmaker as well. He and I went to college together. I was lucky enough to help him with his short film To Air, which is a sci-fi drama that is actually currently going through some festivals right now. It's actually getting some awards. It's really exciting to see that happening right now. I just knew going into this, I needed someone like Derek who knew a lot more about this preliminary budgeting, line sheets and breakdowns. He's done it for a feature film, or I haven't done a feature film yet. So I was more than happy to kind of hand him the keys to the kingdom and that, and let him kind of take over my breakdowns and budgets and whatnot, and kind of have him look over those and give him a little bit of a polish. Alex Browning, who I had on another video, who is my brother, very long time collaborator, and he was very involved very early in pre-production, even keying in on the script and kind of giving insight more than what a typical DP would probably do. Jordan Roper, he kind of came on as an executive producer, helping a big picture get made, where it was going to go, how we're going to get it financed, and so on and so forth. Someone who came late to the game but was very essential was Jordan Wood, who was an art director for Derek's short film To Air. He was awesome enough to be excited about the project. Moving into picking our location, finding our Lone Mountain, so to speak. Obviously knew that it had to be in Montana. This is a film grant recipient from the Big Sky Film Grant. We are required to film at least 50% of our film in Montana. We had to make the decision early on, like, let's just do it all in Montana. It's all going to be exterior. It's all mostly outdoors. Let's just do it that way, and we'll just make it easy on all of us. Throughout the years, I had looked at Montana and kind of figured that there's a very wide range of terrains and locations there, and that probably makes sense of why the Film Commission has so many productions come to Montana, because Montana is very diverse. There are areas that are very flat, open range grasslands, very large bodies of water, jagged, huge cliffs, very deep, thick forests, and kind of everything in between when it comes to western type of terrains. That's why so many productions go there. And so we knew that we could find a spot that was going to work for us. Our production designer and Alex and myself, we had kind of developed a look and feel for this story. We had shot the original concept film, Island Park, Idaho, just outside of the Grand Teton National Forest. It was just a different feeling forest. Maybe it wasn't quite the vision I had initially. I thought of a very more thick, deeper, almost like mossy, mysterious. I had done a lot of scouting and looking and Google images and turns out on Google images of like these most magnificent looking forests that were very Revenant-like is what I used. Like they shot the Revenant up in Banff, and near Calgary. Beautiful big forest, right? Love the Revenant, and I kind of had a lot of inspiration from that. Not far south from there is the Glacier National Park, and I saw this image. I think it was the first one I saw on their archives, and I like fell in love with it. Really thick, dense, almost barren trees, lots of moss, very green. It's a mysterious, vast wilderness that our character Jedediah is lost in and trying to escape. I started talking to Derek about this. I really would love if we could shoot near Glacier. And he kind of looked at me and was like, I have several family members that live up in Polson, Montana, which is just south of Glacier. They have summer homes there that we could most likely use for crew to stay in and lodge. And that for me was almost like, we're going there. That alone was the defining moment where I said, okay, this is the place we're going to shoot. Another key individual that I brought on board was Jordan Wood. Jordan actually lives here in Eastern Idaho. I reached out to Jordan and he felt very excited for this, and I told him that I really needed a production designer. And he had done production design, at least he was kind of the art director for Derek's film To Air, had some great experience on some bigger film productions in Utah when he was down there. I kind of thought he was the guy to help kind of bring the vision of the aesthetics and the look and feel of this film. I'll just say he was super key to developing the entire look of this film. That's kind of like the first point that I will make to anyone who is working on a film and you want to kind of make it look a little bit outside of that, just a student film or an entry-level film. Everyone usually assumes it's cinematography, and it's true, cinematography is a huge part. In most cases, when you look at no-budget films to big-budget films, in my opinion, the biggest difference is actually in the production design. It's in the costuming, the set design, the locations, color palette. It's honestly just handing off the look and feel to an individual who can make it feel cohesive, make it feel like it's all in one. But when you're partnered up with someone who has an even further idea and knowledge to kind of flesh out your ideas that maybe you don't have, it just makes everything run so much smoother. I could tell very early on from our meetings and kind of the lookbooks that he was creating and coming up with and concepts. We had shared a lot of Pinterest boards, and I had shared with him kind of, here's what I've been going the last 3 years in my head, what this kind of looks like. And I think he very quickly caught on and even added in some really cool insights to this film. That's just a little shout out to Jordan of just a key role, even if they're not like a full-blown production designer, an art director, someone that's maybe more on the pre-production side, less maybe on the actual execution of things, just someone to help kind of bring your look together. It goes a very long way, believe me. We had very early decided that this film, we wanted to make it feel like it was going for realism. We're shooting on film. It was going to be a period piece. We wanted as realistic costuming we could do. Props, we wanted to be accurate in the time period, which we were saying was about 1865. We figured one of the most key props to this entire story had to be done in an authentic way. What that prop were these photographs. And in my early drafts of the script, I had this character finding a carte visite, which is essentially a kind of a cardstock printout copy of a tintype back in the late 1800s. I've always been fascinated with early photography technology and the practices and techniques of photography. In the early concept film I did in my senior project for the tintype, I had done a kind of cheap way of doing it. I had took a photo of my cousin who was in costume at the time during one of our costume tests, and I kind of superimposed that on a tintype that I kind of recreated in Photoshop and then printed that out, and then we had that as our carte visites. And I was planning on doing that process again because it actually turned out pretty decent, but I had always wished that we could have done the real thing. We could have, because tintype wet plate processes are still done today. We really decided we're shooting this on film. We're trying to go really accurate with our props and our costuming, and we're not going to do a real tintype. That's where we decided we had to create that tintype. And that's definitely going to be another video as I go much more in depth and kind of give you guys a more insider's look of what that process looked like. Yeah, that'll come out soon. We had quite a bit of a challenge for us to work out our budget to make this thing happen. Here's kind of like the big 5 things you have to be aware of when it comes to your budget for your film. First thing you have to be aware of is your page length, because that determines how long your film's going to be. The second thing you have to be aware of is how many shooting days you're trying to get this in, because shooting days, every single day you have shooting is money. Because if you're paying people, you have crew, you're renting out costumes, you have actors on set, they cost every single day you. And so the sooner you can shoot it, that should be your goal. However, the next thing that you need to consider is how many locations you have to worry about, because locations do lengthen your shooting time, because every location becomes a new beast and it just becomes that much more complicated. I started with 2 locations. This ended up being a lot more than 2. After locations, the next thing is going to be how many actors you have. So actors is number 4. And then number 5 obviously is if you have really crazy set pieces or props, special effects. If there's a gun shootout, we had a whole town that we were trying to populate with hundreds of extras. So that's kind of like an obvious number 5 thing that you have to be aware of when it comes to your budget. And in our case with Lone Mountain, the last one I tried to shoot was 2 days, which was not going to happen even on the earlier version of it. So I thought, okay, let's double it up. Let's give us maybe like 4 days and then an extra day, like a 5th day. I just started doing the numbers and I could not keep it under 30 grand, because for everyone I wanted on set and every role I wanted to fill for the crew, and it just was that was just a little bit out of the budget of what I wanted to have this be made for. Derek and I kind of settled around, with the approval of our director of photography, Alex, who was going to be manhandling this camera and shooting all the setups. We settled in about 4 days. 4 days is kind of that sweet spot we found that we could keep our budget around that $20,000 mark. For our budget, we received $10,000 from the film grant from Montana, which could only be used in Montana. In order for us to shoot it on film, we had to raise some more money to be able to go out, do a test shoot, and then fly out myself, rent the gear, buy the stock, development costs. We ended up needing about $5,000 for that. We were able to raise another $8,000 to cover those expenses, plus a little bit more. And then I ended up investing some of my own money in that, which put us roughly around that $20,000 mark, which I was feeling great about. I was like, okay, that's more than I was thinking we were going to be able to raise for this thing. So we're feeling a little better. Let's talk about crew size. This is something that is really tough. It's kind of like choosing your favorite family members. In Derek's experience with To Air on his film, he had 20 people on set. A lot of them were free people. A lot of them, some of them were students. You had people like me who I wasn't charging a day rate when I was there filming with him. An ideal situation in my experience for being on set with the film is obviously you have your director DP. The next big one is the assistant director. That was going to be Derek's role, most likely. A second AD that runs a lot of the day-to-day. The AD can focus on more big picture, while the second AD focuses a little bit more on scene to scene, shot to shot, working with PAs. The assistant director is literally the sergeant on set, making sure everything moves along and everything happens the way it should, so you can get the film done. In the camera department, we thought it'd be really nice to have 2 assistant cameras, an AC and a second AC. Having to load film, it was going to be very helpful to have a clapper and a loader, which people don't realize what the second AC is supposed to load film as well as slate for you on set. We thought that was very important. And then on the lighting department, we had a gaffer who's over all the lighting, works the DP, key grip, executing the lighting setups and understanding how all the light rigs and everything work. And then another grip under the key grip. And then other departments, we thought obviously it's super important to have a script supervisor, making sure takes are being done correctly, basically saving the editor in post, saving them and being very anal about details and continuity. Sound mixer obviously is a big deal on set, having some dedicated sound. Makeup and hair, I very rarely have had makeup and hair on set on my productions, so I really wanted to have that. Obviously our production designer overseeing everything as being executed out, him having an art director, set decorator helps. There's a lot of time it takes for decorating these different setups and sets, and having 2 to 3 is still a very small crew. And then a couple PAs, because PAs are always needed on set, and you don't know what they're going to be doing, if they're holding up beadboard for bounce, or if they're going to be running to grab SD cards from the gas station, dropping off people from the airport. We realized with this big list was going to be way out of budget for us, especially when we're going to be shooting 4 days. We would, instead of having a big crew, shorter shoot time, we thought let's give ourselves a little more time and try to consolidate on just the bare essentials for our crew. So this is what we ended up getting. As you see, it's almost half of that list. So I had myself, Alex, director DP, and then we had an assistant director. So this is what Derek was doing as producer. He was going to take on the role as the AD and run kind of a lot of the shop. So he was going to take on not only as AD and second AD, but he would also be doing kind of a script supervisor role, which I kind of wish we could have gotten a scripty. But at the time and the budget, we just felt that was the one we had to cut out. We were able to get an assistant camera, which was huge, especially when we were shooting on film, and it required a lot of hands. It required, moving. We figured an AC would be important to get. For our lighting department, we had 2 extra individuals, gaffer and a key grip. We thought maybe of cutting that even less. We can go more natural, not having as much lighting setups. Alex felt very strongly that as we're shooting on a stock that was a lot slower, we needed artificial light so we could keep lighting consistent and we could get through the day and shoot longer and have more consistency, because we don't know what's going to happen out there. And then maybe in that canopy in the woods, maybe we need light because it's going to be so dark and our film is not going to be as fast. You're stuck with your ISO when you're on film. So for that, we decided to have a 2-person crew, with obviously Alex being able to help out when needed, or our AC even helping. And then obviously we had someone dedicated to sound. We had originally cut makeup and hair, but I kind of weaseled back saying, hey, Derek, I think we need makeup and hair. Like I said, I think we're going to have so many close-ups on this film. I think we need, for continuity, we need to feel, I just like to have that. We had an art director we ended up getting from Montana, as well as an extra PA, kind of a set deck too, which I will go into as we get to shooting days of who those people were. Let's take a little bit of a lesson that is so important for this when it comes to shooting off your home base. So it would have been a lot easier if I shot in Utah or Idaho, because we have a lot of contacts that would probably have worked for free. It was definitely a struggle. It was difficult for us to find enough people to come help on this project, because there were people that would have loved to come, but they just couldn't justify flying or driving all the way out to northern Montana. So we had to really pick and choose who we were going to have. Being on location, I am a firm believer of being on location. I think it usually ends up saving you in so many other ways if you can make it work and find the right place, going to there and shooting there. However, there are some points I want to make that in this pre-production what were absolutely essential in making it work in this location, so we weren't going in blind. We worked with the film commission, and anytime that I was having roadblocks, I couldn't get a hold of individuals, or I couldn't find the right people, or whether it was costume designers or locations for setup or photos of places. When Derek and I and Travis were trying to just get logistics kind of moving for this, how are we going to get this thing shot? Immediately, once we decided, I'm just going to work through Allison at the film commission, doors opened up. It was incredible what they did. They just made stuff happen. It was unbelievable. That's why my eyes were open of why these states have film commissions, especially if a lot of these film crews come from big locations like Chicago, New York, LA, and they're going to these rural areas. They don't know where to go. They don't know the land. They don't know the people. They need to find so much to get these big productions going. And the film commission is kind of like that insider that just gives them all the information, that just tells them what they need and gets them the contacts they need, because that's who you know in this business, right? Same happened for us, even though we're from Idaho and Utah. You think in Montana we're just not that far, but it is a different country, different place. And the first one that we really had a hard time with was figuring out our costume and props. Jordan was having a very hard time getting hold of anyone. And we were starting to figure out trying to source it in Utah, where he did a lot of work, and we were going to have to haul things up and rent them out, and it was not going to be able to be used for our Montana spend, and that was just stressing me out. And once I reached out to the film commission, they put me in contact with a couple of individuals out of Whitehall. That was a huge connection we made, and they were able to just move the project right along, and we were able to fit right in their schedule, and it just worked beautifully from there on. I'll probably talk more about that process of working with Sharon and Mark out of Whitehall, who were so incredible at what they do, and they know this genre. The next thing that was an absolute key moment for this film to get made was when we got in touch with a production company and event center called Nova Vento. We were looking to film in Polson or in the nearby area. We had some contacts there we could stay with, but we just needed help location scouting. We needed more information. She put us in contact with a guy named Brandon out there from Nova Vento. There was a kind of something that went our way as far as luck. This production company, who was used to having much, much bigger productions come through, had a 6-month-long production pull out because of the strike that happened this year. And so they had no one. And Brandon, who was one of the owners there, was very generous to say, we don't have anything else to do, so we'd love to house you guys. We'll work within your budget, and we'll get you everything you need, basically, and build into that the scouting and everything else. And I look back now, and at the time I was a little nervous about, what are they going to charge? And I don't know if it's beyond our budget. That was 100%. That was a key moment for this film and getting made the way it needed to, is partnering up with Nova Vento and having them help on so many aspects of this film, not just the scouting and the locations, but they helped us with logistics and getting bear spray, understanding the environment better, working with the natives and the locals to get us permits on land that we were going to be shooting on the reservation. We just would have been like a fish out of water trying to figure out how to shoot in Montana, and it would have been a disaster. The next key point when you're shooting outside of state, so important to build into your budget a location scout, especially after we had just done a test shoot in LA. We knew that we needed to do another scout. I had always thought maybe you can just do it virtually. They can FaceTime you, send video clips, maybe give you, stills, and that might be true some of the way. But I'm so glad that we ended up going to Montana, because not only was it so essential for us to be able to get a real feel for these scenes, and like on the creative side, it just gives you so much more insight of when you're finishing the storyboards, you're kind of figuring out how you're mapping it out in your head of how it's going to all fill out. But in addition to that, it is so important to go check out all the logistical aspects of the production. How far are gas stations? How long does it take to get to set? What amenities are there? If you need to get food, crafties, you kind of build it out things you didn't expect when you're there at first. Where are you going to get power? How are you going to supply, gas for your generators? And on this one, we actually documented a fair amount of our process. And this video, I realized that I'm going to have to do another video about our location scout and how that went. it gives real insight of what it felt like to be there before we actually shot the film. And I wanted to give you as much insight to what that was like. All right, starting to wrap up this video now. I want to talk about the things that went well and the things that maybe didn't go so well. I think we had the right people involved. I think doing filmmaking is a people business. It's more about who you know and who can help you get this thing made more than anything else. It's about the people I brought on. It's guys like Derek, Travis, my brother Alex, it's people at Novavento, it's the Film Commission, it's Jordan Wood as our production designer, kind of bringing to life and actually figuring out how to get this thing to look the way we want it to look. If you partner with the right individuals, it's going to get made. They're going to pull you along. when you fall short in certain things, they will kind of pick up the slack and get you to the finish line. I would say for me, as if you are a creative head, and especially if you're the director of this film, you have to have an absolutely clear vision of what you want this to be. It may not be what actually ends up being, but you need to have a very clear idea of every scene, every shot, the look, the feel, how the camera moves. You don't have to worry about if it's like the right decision or if it's the practical one. You just need to have a decision in mind. And then with your collaborators, if you bring them on board, you need to communicate that vision to them very concisely, very clearly, so that they can get on board and they can help either make it better or they can make it more realistic and achievable. And I think with Jordan and Alex, they were both really key in kind of filling in those parts that maybe I hadn't thought of or maybe didn't consider. Pre-production is so essential when it comes to pulling off a film. Some people think that creativity and the fun part of production and like finding out new things and improv scenes, that comes when you're shooting a film. Production is just getting to the finish line before you run out of time. You're just trying to execute what you already planned and prep. So pre-production is, for me, is one of my favorite parts because it is so fun, it's so creative, and you're just in your head, the film is perfect. It hasn't been touched by your frailties or the things that you're not good at, or the day that on production that weather ruined it for you, or the bad actors that didn't say the lines like you thought, or the takes that you missed. It hasn't been soiled yet. So pre-production is like that perfect image of what you want your film to be. That's the time to be creative. That's the time to really figure out what this film's going to be. And then in production, you're just trying to get it. You're just trying to make it happen before you run out of time and money. Point number 3, I honestly would consider a production designer for just about any project that has a budget behind it. Even if you're doing a micro short or a no budget short, I would find someone that could fill that role as production designer. I think it's so important to have someone take on the look and the feel that partners up with that's not over camera, that's not over everything else like you are as a director. Partner with someone that can bring to life these characters and this world and builds that world. And that's what really separates student films, amateur films, from those films that really feel like it comes off the screen more lively and you don't think about the frailties of the low budget films. Point number 4, I would say you have to continue to be creative with your logistics and your setups. That comes very, very early on with your concepts, with the scripts, and knowing what you can actually achieve, what you have access to. Even when you get down the road more and more, you're going to run into more issues, more problems, as we did, as we kind of continue to figure out, man, how are we going to pull this off? And you have to continue to be creative. And that's why it's so great having a great producer like Derek, is he continued to solve problems and he continued to make my vision work. Now for the things that I wish we did a little better. Things would have gone a lot smoother in production if we would have done this sooner or better. First one for me is just lock down the script sooner, as soon as you can. And I know there's so many times you hear behind the scenes where films are, they're rewriting pages the day before they're shooting, and that happens for a number of reasons. For me, and with Low Mountain, I'll probably talk about this a little bit more, Derek became my co-writer, and he and I really kind of went back and forth a lot on the story. For me, when we changed the script, and I had been in my head for so long, it was hard for me to kind of wrap my head around it, to be honest. And I think if you're taking away pages, then maybe that's fine, but we were adding pages. I do wish that we would have kind of had the final draft of the script months before we started shooting, and we didn't. We were literally rewriting it until days before we shot it, which happens most of the time for screens, but I wish it didn't, because it just causes so many problems. And then when you have a finished script, this actually follows is to have a very strong storyboard. I know some directors don't like to storyboard. I kind of am on board of saying, like, you don't have permission to throw out the storyboard until you have a storyboard. And for me, I actually went through an earlier version of my script before we had made changes. I did storyboard the entire film. Was it super polished? Probably not. It probably had a little more work, but at least Alex and I had every shot that we saw this film being. However, because the script wasn't locked down, the storyboard really wasn't able to be used because it wasn't the final script. With the storyboard comes a shot list. You can shot list a little easier. You know how many shots you need to get to pull it off. And with your shot list, it's an assistant director thing, but having every shot in mind for every setup and every scene is just, especially for guys like me who are little to no budget and don't have a lot of room for mistakes or reshoots. You kind of have to get it when you're there. We don't have a lot of room for error. I know some people don't like shot lists. If you're beginning and you're starting it out, you gotta get shot lists. That's it for this video today. This is just kind of like I said, a first person view of how it went for us in pre-production, what we ended up doing. Just, yeah, everything that we're doing is we're preparing and lining everything up for our 4-day shoot. I hope this is informative. I mean, I sure wish that I had someone talk about this before I did this. Learn from my lessons, learn from the good lessons I had that we did well and the lessons I wish we did better. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.